Welcome to the Stoic Responder Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Healy. As a special agent who spent more than 15 years conducting large-scale fraud, money laundering, and public corruption investigations, Stoic philosophy provided a mindset edge that became the foundation of my professional success. My mission today is to share those same ancient mindset lessons with you so that you can turn obstacles into opportunities and adversity into advantage. Time to muster up. Welcome back to another week of the Stoic Responder Podcast, everyone. Before we get started, I want to encourage you to check out, if you haven't done so, the Substack page. That is the Stoic Responder at Substack or .substack.com. stoicresponder.substack.com. Substack is a long-form writing sort of blog. If you've been on the internet for a minute and you go back to like blogger.com, back when I was racing Ironman and trail races, I used to do my race reviews on Blogger because I didn't really use social media. But Substack is a really unique place where you can get long-form content. You can get original independent journalism. A lot of journalists have left the mainstream media complex, the sort of narrative-driven complex, and started doing their reporting and their opinion pieces on Substack. You can also find a lot of great, not just long-form writing content, but podcasts on there, and a lot of hybrid sites like mine, the Stoic Responder, where I post my long-form writing, my essays. Typically, those go out on Mondays. I usually write about leadership on Mondays. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, I tend to write about leadership from a Stoic perspective. I put those out on Mondays, and I also put out all four podcast episodes a week via the Substack channel. And if you subscribe, it's totally free. If you subscribe at that Substack channel, all of these come to your inbox. So it makes it easier. What I'm trying to do is reduce the friction, right? Sometimes Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, they change their download metrics, their algorithm. They change it so that, if you maybe skipped a week, you were on vacation and you didn't download the episodes, it doesn't pop to the top of your list. You just kind of have 15 different podcasts you're downloading. This makes it super easy. If you subscribe to the Substack, it's going to go directly to your email. I'm not going to abuse your email. I don't send you a whole bunch of stuff. It's just the stuff that comes directly from the Substack, which is going to be the 4 podcasts a week and then my long form essays. And it just gives you a 10 or a 15 minute long, straight into your inbox message of Stoic resilience that you can open up and listen to on your way to or from work. And it's just an easy way to receive it without having to worry about whether something downloaded or didn't. So I wanted to put that out there at the forefront because I know a lot of you, by the time I get to my little spiel at the end of it, are tuning out because the message is over. So if you haven't checked it out, go check out the Stoic Responder Substack channel. Again, it's completely free, and that is at the stoicresponder.substack.com, and you can get these delivered directly to your inbox, as well as my weekly leadership lessons that I put out typically on Mondays. And that's a little bonus for you if you happen to go to the Stoic Responder Substack channel. All right, getting into the week, folks. Hope everybody had a great weekend. It is Tuesday, July 30th. We're coming up on the end of a month. And, months, when they end, it gives us a chance to have a fresh start, a fresh beginning. So if there's anything that you've been thinking, oh, that's going to be a New Year's resolution, well, every day is a new day. But, we like to start fresh at the beginning of a month. We like to measure things in that way. So be thinking about the changes that you want to make or the things that you want to do starting on August 1st, which is coming right up later on this week. So let's jump into the show. I'm going to start you out with a quote from Marcus Aurelius. For those that don't know, a little housekeeping here. The 4 episodes a week, each one focuses on one of the cardinal virtues of wisdom, temperance, justice, and courage. And so I try to figure out one quote in particular that really speaks to each of those virtues. Typically, the order goes, for me, I like to do wisdom, then courage, then justice, then temperance. So if you've been paying attention to the podcast or listening to it, you might catch on to that. But we're starting out with a quote related to wisdom today from Marcus Aurelius. It says, "Stop allowing your mind to be a slave, to be jerked about by selfish impulses, to kick against fate and the present, and to mistrust the future." So I named this episode "A Slave to Impulse" for exactly this reason, right? We need to stop being jerked around, exactly as Marcus Aurelius says, by selfish impulses. We need to stop kicking against fate. In other words, we need to stop pushing fate aside. and we need to accept the present, and we need to stop mistrusting the future, right? We need to stop wasting the present and the future because we are fighting and struggling against the external, against what fate has provided for us. Now, let's look at this through the lens of a law enforcement career. Law enforcement is a challenging career, in large part due to the occupational culture and the regular exposure to stressors and trauma. And unlike other jobs where there's plenty of stress, where regular talk therapy might be an option, cops can't always do that. They can't always speak about what they've experienced during their shift, even to their family, because there's witnesses they have to protect. There's evidence that needs to be safeguarded. There's subjects still at large oftentimes. So a lot of the same stressors that you might be experiencing at your job, a cop might be experiencing, but there's this added layer of can't talk about it that comes with the culture, that comes with the job. And so even among colleagues, this promotes repression. It promotes not talking about our mental struggles. And if you do talk about your mental struggles, it can be a surefire ticket directly to the rubber gun squad. And it can also create an atmosphere where your colleagues doubt you or don't trust you. And so police keep a lot of these stressors inside, sometimes indefinitely. And stress is an absolute killer. It's an absolute killer. I don't have time in a short podcast to go into how stress impacts the body. That is something that I should bring my wife on to talk about, maybe as a bonus episode, to talk specifically about stress and to talk about somatics and to talk about what she does in nervous system regulation with her business. And maybe we'll get into that in a bonus episode. But stressors come from a lot of that, like internalizing these things on the job that we literally cannot talk about, cannot speak about. And over time, these stressors and their lack of relief, they can increase the chances of police engaging in unhealthy behaviors. The overuse of alcohol, the turning to narcotics, the turning to I know a lot of cops, Border Patrol agents, CBP officers, and police officers who started using steroids, who got heavily into working out, into fitness as a means of stress relief. But then because, again, they're internalizing a lot of these things, they're not talking about a lot of these things, it becomes its own stressor. And they started using steroids. They started using other banned substances to enhance their training. These sort of things happen. They're all across our profession, unfortunately. And this overuse of these substances to give us that stress relief at the end of the day, that can lead to full-blown substance abuse disorders. It can lead to dependency. It can lead to associated behavior, financial, and legal issues that often come with addiction. And some studies suggest that as many as 30% of law enforcement officers have a substance abuse disorder. That's 3 in 10. As many as 30% of police have a substance abuse disorder. We don't have to do this, guys. We don't have to become slaves to the stressors that we experience. We don't have to allow these things to create these problems that create this ripple effect in our lives. You see, our thoughts influence our emotions and our behaviors. And by identifying and challenging negative and distorted thoughts as they happen, we can begin replacing them with more balanced and realistic thoughts, which allows us to engage in positive and healthy behaviors, while also reducing our reliance on the activities that are contributing to these greater distresses, these additional stressors, this greater dependency, these additional issues in our life that come from the self-medication in the bottle, in the narcotics, in the unhealthy behaviors. The best time to get control of these negative thoughts is before they get control of you. So that means catching them, recognizing them, catching them, and changing them in the moment. Now, I'll do a special episode on cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a type of psychotherapy that is in a lot of ways similar to Stoicism and shares a kind of root theory with Stoicism. It's its own type of therapy, and it talks a lot about this exact concept of catching our bad thoughts, of questioning our bad thoughts, and then replacing our bad thoughts with better thoughts. Why do I feel this way? I feel a way. Instead of letting that drive my behavior, ask myself, why do I feel this way? Ask myself, is this reasonable? Is this rational? And then change the thought before we allow it to get a hold of us, to gain root, to gain purchase. We'll get into a special episode about that, but that's essentially what we're talking about here. We're talking about not letting our thoughts influence our emotions and behaviors by identifying and challenging the negative thoughts as they happen. I don't know if you've ever considered this. But here's my action item for you today. Here's what I want you to do today and this week to try to start identifying some of these things as they happen. I want you to keep a thought record for the day, meaning I want you to take out your notebook or your journal or just one of these steno pads that I always have next to me at all times, or I keep those big sticky notes next to me at all times. I'm always making lists. I'm always writing notes to myself. I want you to keep a thought record for the day. Every time a negative or irrational thought enters your mind, I want you to make a note of it, and I want you to replace it with a more balanced and realistic thought. So when you think the world is against me, my boss hates me, I'm never going to get promoted, whatever the negative thought is, I want you to catch that. I want you to recognize it. I want you to write it down. Every time something negative or irrational starts to put you down that dark path, I want you to catch that thought. I want you to write it down. I want you to make a note of it. And then I want you to say, is this reasonable? Is this rational? What is a more balanced or realistic feeling that could replace this one? If I'm feeling this way about a certain external pressure, what is another way to think of that will replace this negative or irrational thought? I want you to practice that this week. Try to do it today. Roll it into tomorrow, and I guarantee you will start to see a huge change and a huge difference in the way that your mind is working and the way that your mind is thinking. That's what I got for you today, folks. Before I let you go, let me give you a couple of ways that you can support the podcast. As you know, this is completely free. It's a service that I do for y'all. I want to make sure that you are getting some tools, some mindset tools that can help you do exactly this. Catch those negative and irrational thoughts and change your way of thinking. Change the way you contextualize the world around you. Change the things that you are focused on so that you're moving the ball forward, that you are living a happier and healthier and more virtuous life. In order to do that, it costs a little bit of money. It doesn't cost that much, but one way that you can support this podcast and make sure that we're covering our basic expenses so we can keep bringing this content to you is by picking up a copy of my book, In Valor, 365 Stoic Meditations for First Responders. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, anywhere you get your books. It's available for Kindle and Nook for instant download right now if you like to receive your books that way, or if you like to have a physical paperback copy of a book like I do, where you can take some notes, you can highlight some things, you can get it that way on Amazon Prime. It'll be there in a day, 2 days. It's awesome. It's a great resource for law enforcement and other first responders who want to practice Stoic philosophy daily. I'm trying to give you practical advice and steps that you can take to implement it in your life through this podcast. This book is a great companion piece to the podcast. It's going to give you quotes from some of the Stoic philosophers, some contextualization that's directly relatable to your job, and daily journal prompts or action items, just like we just did. They're going to help you integrate these lessons and actually live the philosophy. Number 2, as I talked about at the start of the show, you can apply or you can subscribe to the Stoic Responder podcast on Substack for free, and you can get these podcasts delivered directly to your email. You'll also get my weekly newsletters with Stoic leadership and personal development tips. And finally, like, share, and subscribe this so that others can find it, learn about what we're doing, and we can share some of this ancient wisdom with some of your friends and colleagues, because I know they could use it as well. Got 3 more episodes for you this week, maybe even a bonus episode. Stay tuned. But until tomorrow, folks, thanks so much. You are How to Roll. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, like, rate, and share this podcast so that we can spread the benefits of Stoicism to other first responders. It will only take you a few moments, but it can help us tremendously. Until next time, How to Roll.